So box.
Hi, my name is Rochelle and you're watching or listening to Box F1 Pod. Welcome to the Brazilian Grand Prix episode. If you're watching, you can probably tell I'm in a different background, and that's because I am in England, which is why there was no Mexico Grand Prix episode, because I was traveling. But don't worry, I'll chat a bit about the Mexico Grand Prix before diving into the Brazilian Grand Prix. But just wanted to say I'm very excited that I'm in England because for the Las Vegas Grand Prix, I'm going to go to the F1 arcade in London at 6 a.m. and I'm going to watch it live, and it's going to be very fun, hopefully. But that's in a couple of weeks. Until then, though, we have a lot to discuss from this weekend. So without further ado, it's time for the digital warm-up. Lap 1. All right, lap 1 podium moments from the Mexico Grand Prix, aka my top 3 moments from last week that I didn't get a chance to talk about in an episode. So the first thing, Checo's DNF. If you watched, you saw that it was a very hectic start right at the beginning. Max tried to squeeze in between Charles and Carlos, and as he's doing that, Checo comes out of nowhere and ends up popping up over Charles and then going off, and basically his race ended. It wasn't Charles's fault. Checo went for a gap that what he probably shouldn't have, but also should have, because he's a racer and he saw a gap. But anyway, it was really sad because it was Checo's home Grand Prix and he DNF'd in before the first turn even happened. Super sad. The funniest tweet I saw about this whole situation was someone saying, but we did hear rumors that Checo was going to retire in Mexico. Not that kind of retiring, but I thought it was funny. Speaking of the retirement or replacement rumors or whatever, they keep being denied. Daniel had an amazing qualifying in Mexico, and everyone was like, oh, look, Checo's getting fired now. And then Checo DNF, and they're like, oh, look what's going to happen. But everyone in Red Bull keeps denying that Checo's leaving. But that's not stopping people from talking. Max was asked who he prefers as a teammate during a press conference in Brazil, and he's like, this is a stupid question. Why would I ever answer that? Why are you putting me in this position? And proceeded to say nice things about both Checo and Daniel. But yeah, the media is really running with the fact that Checo's time is running out, and it really can't be helping his mental state. All of this talk and doubting him. It's a hard situation to be in. Another thing, my second thing, which sort of bounces off the last thing, is that Charles got booed for probably the first time in his life ever. I don't think that man's ever experienced a boo or a negative reaction in his life towards him. So Max and Lewis were on the podium with him, and they seemed to get the memo that mentioning Checo or something about Mexico in general would probably save them from boos. So Max was big upping Checo, no boos. Lewis tried to speak Spanish, no boos. And then Charles gets up there and he's immediately just booed collectively. The entire country of Mexico was booing him. And usually when people get booed, they sort of ignore it and move on. Charles, on the other hand, was like, no, guys, it wasn't my fault. There was nothing I could do. I'm so sorry. I had nowhere to go. And the boos immediately stopped. But the fact that Charles addressed it and started defending himself on the spot was kind of funny and sad, because I really don't think he's ever been booed in his life. Also, another thing that I really liked, speaking of post-race stuff, is in the cool-down room when they replayed Lewis's overtake of Charles, when he went out through the grass and overtook him. I think it was ESPN F1 zoomed in and freeze framed Max's reaction, where he whipped around and was at Lewis. And I just thought I think it's so funny when that's the best part of the cool down room, right? Is seeing their live reactions to the stuff they don't see on track, because they all love racing. So when they see a good move, it's fun. It's fun to watch them react. And the third thing I should probably mention was that Lando's drive last weekend was phenomenal. That was the one driver of the day vote. He's gone 3 in a row now, including Brazil. That was one I fully understood why Lando got it. He had some great overtakes, but he basically went from 17 to 5th. And he like truly was making his way down track, driving fast, faces passed, and he was point bound, and he ended up 5th, which is an insane drive. So like definitely well deserved on driver of the day. Another funny moment that happened was that the commentators were Brundle and David Croft were talking about how he was winning the votes, and then one of them was like, I think even I would vote for Lando if only I knew how to do it. And the other one's like, I think you do it on F1.com. And then they like both sitting there trying to figure out how to vote for driver of the day, when I'm pretty sure every race they announce at some point, like, don't forget, you still have time to vote for driver of the day. Head over to like they like give instructions on it. The fact that A, they've never done it, and B, they seem to not know the instructions is kind of funny. All right, lap 2 off the grid, where I'm basically just going to list off some of my favorite social media and internet moments from the paddock over the last week and a half-ish. So on the way to Brazil, I think Charles and Pierre flew together, and they posted a picture of them playing chess on the jet. And apparently Charles won and said he's much better than Pierre. Also, Alex Albon posted a Mexico City dump, and he continues to be like my favorite captioner ever. There was a picture of Alex like next to a very large poster of George Russell, like flicking him. And just like incredible content all around. All of his pictures of Lily, all the like trolling posts, pics, whatever. But it was funny that George commented on that post and was like, "Hola, amigo." I love their friendship, honestly. I think Alex makes George better. Also, Alex did another CeraVe commercial, and Lily posted the behind the scenes on her TikTok. You must watch, because like Alex did like a Halloween type one. It was like supposed to be like kind of spooky, and the lights were flickering in the video that he posted. And then the behind the scenes shot, it shows Lily like filming from an angle, and Alex was turning off the light with his foot. He was like flicking it up and down with his foot. Hilarious. Also, I'm so happy that CeraVe just lets the man cook, you know, like he just totally unhinged marketing content, but like it makes me want to use CeraVe. I love Alex. There was another video for Puma Sports where Charles and Carlos played like a guess who type situation. They both had a Puma athlete on their head, and they had to ask questions, and the other person would answer to help them guess who it was. Carlos had Charles on his head, and Charles's description of himself was hilarious. Carlos at one point was like, "Does the sport involve a ball?" And Charles is like, "Yes, it takes 2 balls." And then he was when Carlos was still thinking, Charles added, "If I were a woman, I'd be in love with him." And hilariously, that was the clue that gave it away. Carlos was like, "Oh, is it you?" I love their relationship, and I love Charles. All right, lap 3, off-duty F1. So basically what they've been up to when they're not driving. So big thing coming up right now is this Netflix golf special, where it's going to be professional golfers teamed up with F1 drivers, and I think it's not Yuki, I don't know why I said Yuki. It's going to be Netflix's first live sporting event, and the drivers participating are Alex, Pierre, Lando, and Carlos. So obviously Lando and Carlos are going to thrive. I don't know how good Pierre is at golf. Alex has admitted that he's terrible at golf. And there was, during the press conference last week when he was asked, Pierre now obviously Alpine is sponsored by Rory McIlroy, whatever that golfer's name is. And so the interviewer was like, "Oh, well, Pierre, you now have like free advice from someone. Alex, where are you going to get your advice?" And Pierre goes, "His girlfriend." And Alex is like, "Oh, well, yeah, my girlfriend, but like, I don't really listen to her, so I don't think it's going to help." And he's like slowly panicking about the fact that he agreed to this and like really can't play golf. I somehow missed this, but there was a running joke with a pumpkin spice latte at Williams during the US Grand Prix. The first reference I saw to anything pumpkin spice related from Williams was Logan posting about his US experience, and then commenting on that post saying, BTW. It's PSL season. And then apparently there was other stuff happening, but Williams posted an explainer video from James Vowles, who, by the way, is so good at explaining things. The way he explained this entire scenario was exactly how he explains, like, he does his, like, F1 car explainer videos. Just so calm, measured, detailed, specific. I could listen to James talk all day. I actually think he might be my favorite team principal at the moment. He's just so good. But basically, the gist of the situation was that Alex was drinking a pumpkin spice latte and was explaining to James how he customized the recipe to his, like, to what he liked. And then he did so great at the sprint race that James apparently joked on the radio that it must be the latte. So on Sunday, James got pumpkin spice lattes for everyone on the team, exactly to Alex's specifications. And then they got double points. But then James ended the video by saying he's not sure he'd ever consume one, even for points. Dead that he did this, also dead that he hated it, and dead that, like, points are not enough of an incentive for him to ever drink something pumpkin spiced again. And one last thing, we missed Lance Stroll's birthday. I think it was right before the US Grand Prix. Chloe posted a very wholesome carousel. I don't think I ever saw anything that the team did for him. But maybe Lawrence's gift will be to let him leave the team. All right, lap 4, trackside in Brazil. Truly one of the greatest moments I've ever experienced in my entire life, but also the worst moment I've ever experienced in my entire life was watching Martin Brundle attempt to interview Machine Gun Kelly. It was horrible, awkward, couldn't look away car crash type of situation. I've linked it in the show notes. You have to watch if you did not see. It was so cringy. Like, it started with Martin. First of all, Machine Gun Kelly was staring at him completely blank-faced, very bizarre. He's also like 4 feet taller than Martin Brundle. And so he was asked, Martin Brundle, like he always does, asks celebrities about what they've got coming up in their career, whatever. So he's like, so how's your career going? And Machine Gun Kelly's like, first of all, he couldn't understand what Martin was saying, had to like re-ask. And then he was like, I don't think about my career. Martin's like, okay. What do you think about F1? And then I don't remember what he said about that. It was bizarre too. And then randomly Machine Gun Kelly goes, what do you think of my career? And Martin Brundle starts giving some weird like response about how he thinks that there's great synergy between the music industry and the motorsports, and it was really weird. And then Machine Gun Kelly interrupts him and is like, let's play an air concert for everyone. I'll be guitar and you be piano. And Martin's like, gotta go now. And kept trying to back away. Machine Gun Kelly wouldn't let it go. He's like, nah, man, just do one chord. Just like one-handed, one chord. And Martin Brundle's like, no, it's time for me to leave now. And just like refused to do like a chord. And Machine Gun Kelly tried several times and then literally just very dramatically did a thumbs down and backed away with a thumbs down, swung around and stormed off. Super bizarre. From both sides. Also important to note, halfway through the race, we were informed that Machine Gun Kelly had actually left the premises. Megan Fox was with him and they just left halfway through the race. Not entirely sure why, or why maybe he accidentally ended up there. I don't know. It was very bizarre. Fernando and Oscar did a helmet swap, which was very cute. Fernando's caption was very funny. It was swapping helmets with a superstar. Also a cool guy. And Oscar also posted it on Twitter, and someone commented on it saying the goat father and the goat son. And Nicole Piastri responded to that tweet saying, I'm pretty sure I would have remembered that. She's so good. Also, Marta is a footballer who plays for the Brazilian national team. For some reason, the broadcast didn't feel to label that. It just said Marta, no last name, comma, footballer, no other details. It was a little weird, but like, her interview was also kind of funny. She was talking about how stressed she was about the race. She's like, I drank yesterday. Also, I drink today. So hope it goes well. It was kind of like, it was funny. Felipe Drogovic was interviewed also. He was congratulated about being the reserve driver for Aston. He was announced to resume his role. And he responds with, It's actually not exactly what I wanted. Tragic. Also, Ecclestone was interviewed by Martin Brundle, and he looked very lost and confused. At one point, Martin was like, "So how do you feel about being here?" And Ecclestone was like, "Surprised." And then as Brundle walked away, he was like, "Well, he did say some very strange things that I wish he wouldn't have said, but like, this wouldn't exist without him, but wish he didn't say that stuff." I want to do a whole thing on Bernie Ecclestone because he is a character that needs to be studied. TBT, Max Mosley, very interesting characters in F1 history. Anyway, lap 5, paddock fits. Not a fit, but still important information. Valtteri shaved. The stash is gone. He is naked, and that feels weird. Like, it just looks bizarre. Lewis Hamilton paid incredible tribute. Like, it was a tracksuit tribute to Senna. It was like this Brazilian-y type flag, and I think there was like it was Brazilian colors, and like I think Senna's face was on the back. Very cool. I liked it a lot. Also, this wasn't this week. This was in Mexico, but Guan Yu rocked up in like a really cool Lululemon jacket and matching bucket hat, and it was amazing. But like, I've never seen anything he wears in the store. It was like, does he get it personalized, custom? Like, how is he getting this stuff? I really want to know. And back to the Brazilian Grand Prix quickly though. One other outfit I want to mention is that Max showed up for the first time to the paddock, not in his uniform. He's always wearing like his Red Bull kit, and he didn't this time. And I thought it was hilarious that his one time that he's not wearing the kit, his outfit is white t-shirt and jeans. It's so Max. I just, one day I hope he just trolls everyone and comes dressed, or lets Guan Yu dress him or something, and just comes looking ridiculous. It'd be great. All right. With that, we conclude the digital warm-up. On to the race rhyme. It's the Brazilian Grand Prix, and at long last, the final sprint of 2023. First up on Friday is qualifying, and as we're underway, things seem to be going well until a biblical storm took the sun away. With 4 minutes left in Q3, the session was ended early. Guess we can't be racing when the sky's all surly. So you'll never believe who ends up in the top 3. Max in P1, duh. Charles in P2, he stopped wearing his red quali pants, you see. And in P3 is none other than Lance fucking Stroll. Like, yay, but even he was like, lol, am I being trolled? Now on Saturday, we paused for a brief intermission. It's time for the sprint race, and luckily the weather is in much better condition. Lando's on pole, and we're so excited. He finished P2 and Checo's in P3. A redemption arc for Perez? We're delighted. Finally, it's Sunday and time to race. The first incident comes, though, during the formation lap, before we even get some pace. It's Charles in the wall due to a hydraulic leak. He says he's so unlucky, and seriously, why is everything for him always so freaking bleak? So Max is once again starting in P1, but before you can blink, there's a crash right in lap 1. Alex and Kevin collided. There's debris and tires flying everywhere. So the FIA pulls out the red flag to clean up and make some repairs. Speaking of repairs, Oscar had some issues, but the red flag gave McLaren time to fix it, so Oscar continues. There were 6 DNFs, but the whole middle of the race got a bit boring until literally the last lap when Checo came flying, soaring. In lap 70 of 71, Charles overtakes Fernando to loud cheers, but Fernando is like, oh, please, hold my beer. So he catches up to Checo in lap 71 and overtakes him back, but Checo fought him right up until the checkered flag. What a glorious lap to wrap up the Brazilian Grand Prix. That was quite a trip. Up next is the Las Vegas Grand Prix. Catch y'all on the strip. Okay. On to analysis. So as always on sprint weekends, I'm going to be doing the sprint day first and then move on to qualifying. So sprint shootout, the biggest thing to take away from there is there was a huge accident between Fernando and Esteban. Fernando and Alonso. Most people are blaming Esti Besti. Esti Besti is blaming Fernando, but the stewards say no further investigation. And also Lando got on pole. Yay! So the starting grid for the sprint race was Lando, Max, Checo, George, Lewis, Yuki, Charles, Daniel, Carlos, Oscar, Kevin, Nico, Pierre, Bottas, Alonso, Ocon, Stroll, Guan Yu, Alex, and Logan. So Max took the lead within the first lap into the first turn. Lando did lose P2 for a bit, but regained it back after a few laps from George. And then Checo overtook George in P10, in lap 10. Poor George. There were the great thing about this sprint race was there were so many little battles, which is what everyone loves, which was the idea behind the sprint race in the first place. And not all tracks are conducive to it. And the format really isn't conducive to a fun thing, but sometimes things work, and Brazil has always been good for a sprint shootout. There was like Pierre overtook Daniel in a wild turn. Fernando overtook Pierre in a wild overtake. Like it was just overtake after overtake after overtake. It was so fun to watch. Yuki overtook Lewis Hamilton and finished P6. Wild stuff. Just like, it was fun. It was what sprint was supposed to be. Max still hates them though. I think he was asked in the press conference before the race if he was excited, and he was like, oh yeah, can't wait. It's gonna be so much fun. Just really doesn't like these weekends. So the results for the sprint race were Max first, followed by Lando, Checo, woohoo! George, Charles, Yuki, Lewis, Carlos, Daniel, Oscar, Fernando, Lance, Pierre, Esti, Besti. I don't know why I said it like that. Alex, Kevin, Guan Yu, Nico, Valtteri, and Logan. All right. Let's move on to quali. So first of all, what the fuck was the weather? When qualifying started, it was a pleasant afternoon. I mean, not pleasant, but just like a cloudy afternoon, you know, like early afternoon. It wasn't anything crazy. Both AlphaTauris were out in Q1 by like 0.5 of a second, but sad. In Q3, so we ended up in Q3 and things were starting to look a bit fishy up there. Lando, the commentators, like, I don't know, I guess they're waiting for something to happen, so they start speaking and like drag it out to see if something will happen. So like, they were like, can Lando do it? Is he gonna get there? Where is he going? Where is Lando? Absolutely nowhere. He went nowhere. They're funny sometimes. So there's 8 minutes to go, and the screen says it's about to rain. Like rain is like 5 minutes away, whatever. And it looks like it's raining, like truly like in the most like apocalyptic fashion. The skies, it just went dark. It just became night. Fernando on his radio was like, it is nighttime. And his engineer was like, agreed. It was just insane. And like, it wasn't just dark. It was like, it looked like a tornado. Like it looked bad. It looked like God was smiting them. I've talked before that F1 this year has been like the 10 plagues resurrected. Darkness is a plague. We had the rainfall, the fires, darkness. What's next? Charles, like, he got in and he was like, I've literally never seen anything like this in my life. It was like, it felt like it was raining, but it wasn't raining. No one understood what happened. The pictures are sick though. But anyway, there were 4 minutes left in the race, in the qualifying session, and they had to stop. They red flagged the session because of the rain, and they actually did it right on time because I think people had like seconds to get out of the stadium before like just like the heavens burst open and appalling storm just happened out of nowhere. Their weather radars do nothing. I swear, like, what are they good for besides pretending like they're looking at the weather? Also, need to mention, Charles has stopped wearing his red qualifying pants. And since he stopped, he's been P1, P2 the last 3 races. So I think we've perhaps figured out part of this curse situation, but there's still a whole lot to unpack because it's not really translating to the race day. Spoiler alert, I guess. Lance tweeted, because he was in P3, he tweeted, okay, I don't understand how P3, but whatever. And all the pictures of like him, Charles, and Max after the race, like looking confused, laughing at the situation. Charles and Max were constantly debriefing in the corner. Max was supposed to be interviewed and continued debriefing like right next to the microphone to Lance and Charles. It was just really bizarre. Need to note that George, Esteban, and Pierre were each penalized 2 grid places for driving too slowly and failing to follow the race director's instructions during qualifying. Not entirely sure at what point, but that's what happened. So while George qualified 6th, Esteban 12th, and Pierre 13th, they each start 2 spots lower. So the starting grid is as follows: Max, Charles, Lance, Fernando, Lewis, Lando, Carlos, George, Checo, Oscar, Nico, Kevin, Alex, Ocon, Gasly, Yuki, Daniel, Valtteri, Logan, and Guan Yu. Okay, on to the race. we have to start with the formation lap, because somehow before it was even over, Charles ended up in the wall. And on the radio, he said, I lost the hydraulics. Why am I so unlucky? Why am I so unlucky? And it was just depressing. I think everyone was just collectively really upset because he is so unlucky. I think he's been kind of pretending this entire year that he's not unlucky, and actually his whole life. Like, he rarely talks about being unlucky. He's like, just accepts his fate. But him saying like, why am I so unlucky is just so sad. Because he is. All right, so in the start, Max started P1 because Charles couldn't race. Lando went from 6th to 2nd in like a few minutes. But we weren't even able to get out of lap 1 because Kevin somehow had contact with Alex that caused like tires to fly like and bounce across the track. There was debris everywhere. Both cars were like totaled on the side of the road. It was a racing incident. It looked kind of like Alex tried to squeeze by the other Haas and then ended up getting hit by Kevin, but I'm not entirely sure that's exactly what happened. I really just think that it literally was an incident. Like, it just happened. Because I don't know if he was actually trying to squeeze by or was just driving. There were cars, like, to start, it's quite hectic. So FIA decided there was no, it was just a racing incident, so there was no investigation, but it was just really sad to see them out so fast. And the session got red flagged because there was a lot of debris and the wall was completely destroyed, so they had to rebuild that. Piastri was potentially an innocent victim in all of this. He ended up having quite a bit of damage. His rear wing and floor were completely messed up, but luckily, because he hadn't stopped before the red flag, he like drove in with everyone else and they were still trying to figure out what to do. They were allowed to continue working on the car, and they fixed the floor and the rear wing in time, in like 25 minutes, which is how long the red flag was. Very impressive. So at the restart, Lewis had a bad start. He was up in 2nd, I think, at that point, and he ended up dropping down to 4th place. And there was a moment for like a couple of laps where we thought that Lando might give Max a run for his money. Well, he was like 0.5 seconds behind Max. And there was a couple of times where they were practically alongside, and I was actually very excited, but it didn't happen. And tragically, one of the commentators said, Lando, so often the bridesmaid. So rude. All right. Honestly, this race was very much not it for me. Like, it was fun at the beginning, absolute delight in the last lap, coming up in a second. But on the whole, like, the whole thing was kind of a dud to me. Maybe I missed something. I know that's an unpopular opinion because Brazil is supposed to be so fun. I usually love Brazil, but like, I was a little disappointed. Also, Sao Paulo sounds, it's going to be a very niche reference and a stretch, but here I go. Sao Paulo sounds to me like Sing to Me Paulo from Lizzie McGuire movie. And then he like squeaked out like completely off key. And he was a disappointment to everyone in the audience. That's the same way I felt about this race. Like, other than the last lap, which I'm about to talk about, like, it was just a disappointment all around. Sing to me, Sao Paulo, and then nothing. Sad. But other than the last lap, which again, in a sec, I want to quickly recap all the DNFs from this race. So there were 6 total. Charles in the formation lap, Alex in lap 1, he didn't complete the lap. Kevin in lap 1 also didn't complete the lap. Guan Yu in lap 22, Bottas in lap 39, and George in lap 57. Both Alfa Romeos were technical issues when they went out, but they were different technical issues. George retired also because of a technical issue, but it was a really weird technical issue. They were like concerned that his oil was overheating, and so they wanted to avoid the engine blowing up, apparently. But before they said that, one of the commentators said, is there an actual reason other than being embarrassed about how slow he is? Wowza. All right, so the last lap, Checo overtakes Fernando in lap 70, and now there's one lap left, and Fernando was hot on his heels. He's like, I'm not letting this go. And then Fernando overtakes him in lap 71. Oh, holy shit. It was an incredible overtake, and the way they were side by side, wheel to wheel, attempting overtakes, both of them just incredible performance. And they went over the line, and honestly, they really had to measure. I think they were 0.10 seconds apart from each other. Like, insane. Like, they really looked side by side. It was so cool. And then in the post race, there was Checo and Fernando had a hug, a very warm, intimate hug. So they were really happy. They were both so happy. They had so much fun. And I just always love Fernando on the podium because he gets giddy AF. He's like skipping and jumping and like passing champagne to the engineers below. It's just great. Lando posted a selfie of the top 3 and captioned it, 2 world champs and me. Also a great moment in the post-race conference. The guys were asked how they feel about Drive to Survive and all of that stuff. And Max said he wished social media didn't exist. And Fernando said that he doesn't give a fuck really. And he actually hasn't even watched a single episode of Drive to Survive. And then he turned to Max and was like, do you? And Max was like, no. And then Max went to Fernando, do you drive to survive? I drive to have fun. And Fernando goes, only on Saturdays. Great content. All right, so the results. Driver of the day. I have to ask, who keeps voting for Lando? For sure, he's had some great races, some great moments, but 3 times in a row? That's insane. Also, this is a total aside, but Lando's picture that they kept flashing after he won and after the driver of the day thing was announced, to me, looks like Anakin Skywalker in his like almost evil era, you know, like the end of Anakin, almost Darth Vader, like right before the whole burning thing. That's like the vibe he has in that photo. Lando girlies, don't come after me for either of my Lando takes, but it's a very kind of creepy photo. It's like villainesque, you know? But back to driver of the day, indisputably, I think that Fernando should have been given driver of the day, if not for the rest of the race, specifically for that last lap and his battle with Checo. I was screaming, crying, throwing up. It totally deserved driver of the day for me. I don't know if it was too late to vote by the time it happened or something, but he totally should have gotten it. My dick in the box is Martin Brundle and Machine Gun Kelly. Can't choose who was more dicky. It was just an overall dicky situation. It was just not a good vibe. I'm also going to throw Charles's luck into here. That poor man can't catch a break, and it's just sad. So, not really a dick, just like sad. So the results are Max, Lando, Alonso, Checo, Lance, Carlos, Pierre, Lewis, Yuki, Esteban, Logan, Nico, Daniel, and Oscar. And then George, Valtteri, Joe, Kevin, Alex, and Charles all DNF'd. Six DNFs. All right, before I get into standings, I want to say that Max keeps finding a new record to break, and this time it's having more than 500 points in one season, which I guess has never happened to a driver before. Dude just keeps rocking it, you know? So in the standings, Max, again, 524 points, insane. Followed by Checo with 258, followed by Lewis with 226. And since Lewis didn't score that many points this season, this race, and Checo was on the podium, their gap is growing a bit in Checo's favor. So maybe he'll get to keep a seat next year. And then Lewis is followed by Fernando with 198 points and Lando with 195. So Lando is like inching his way closer to Fernando with just 3-point difference. And Carlos has 192. So I think he's surpassed Carlos now, even though Carlos had that win. Lando's been on the podium more. I think there was a stat going around that Lando's been on the podium. I think he's tied with someone for most podiums without a win. I think it's like 13 or something. Real sad. In the constructor standings, Red Bull has 782, Mercedes has 382, Ferrari has 362, and McLaren has 282. So they're not going to catch up to Ferrari, I don't think. But Aston Martin has 261, and this seems to have been pretty good. I mean, they both scored points, so I actually don't know. They both were on the podium, so I actually don't know if this changed much for them in terms of the standings. But Aston Martin is at least not struggling as much as they were during their like streak of no podiums. We have 2 races left for things to change for people who are like neck and neck in the teams and constructors championships. Next up is Las Vegas, and as I mentioned at the top of the episode, I'm going to be watching at the F1 arcade, which I'm very excited. They're serving American breakfast, whatever. And I have to get there at 5 a.m. to not be standing the whole time. And the race starts at 6 a.m. and I'm very excited. Weird that I'm not home for it, but you know. And then obviously there's Abu Dhabi, and then the season is done, and then we're on a break. But I hope to do several episodes during the off season because there's a lot I want to cover that I don't get a chance to when I have to talk about the races every week. And if you have stuff that you want to talk about, if there's like F1 stories, history that we want to rehash, movies that we want to watch, send me your ideas and thoughts. I'd love to come up with some non-racy episodes for us to cover during the off season, but we're not there yet. 2 more races to go. Las Vegas is imminent, and then Abu Dhabi, so I'm very excited. In the meantime, you can share with any potential boxes. Would love if you could leave a comment or a review of the podcast. That would mean a lot to me. And then obviously follow on social media at BoxBoxF1 for content in between races. Post a lot on stories of social media stuff that I don't always cover in the episode. So follow me there. Until next time though, Box.